I decided to go with a game since I figured this would be the least picked topic. So the game I chose was none other than the Metal Gear Solid games. I truly believe the greatest accomplishment I've received as a gamer is that I'm kinda good at this game. Or this series. To make it through any Metal Gear Solid game, you need to be patient, you need to be resourceful with your equipment, you gotta pay attention, and you gotta be patient. I believe self-determination theory sums up exactly why people enjoy Metal Gear Solid in any game, really. In Metal Gear Solid, you receive competence, you receive autonomy, and you get the relate, oh my god, relateness. No one walks out of a Metal Gear Solid mission not feeling capable or like they didn't just accomplish a big task. And if for some reason you do feel that way, then you feel lucky you won. I'll get more on that later. I'll give an example of like one of my greatest accomplishments in video games. So my brother let me borrow his Metal Gear collection that had like 3 games on it. And one of those games was Metal Gear Solid Peacewalker. The game itself isn't that very memorable to me. There's like a few things that stick out, but one thing sticks out like a squirrel living in the ocean is when I got to one of the final bosses in the game. It was this big robot, and like it was impossible to do any damage to it. The reason I remember it so vividly is that it took me so long to beat this boss that the entire J. Cole Born Sinner album played 1.5 times before I finally defeated the thing. So I forever know that I beat Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker on June 18th, 2013, the day my favorite album came out. Not only did I feel capable, but I felt like I was the greatest and smartest player in the world, until I noticed it took me over an hour to do. I think the Metal Gear Solid games give you the autonomy feeling, just based on you having so much freedom in the game. Sure, there's a mission to be done, but how you get there, how long you take, what you use, even what you bring with you, is entirely up to the player. There is no stronger feeling of connection to other people than 2 Metal Gear Solid players running into each other randomly. That is more rare than buying a pair of shoes online and one size is bigger than the other. Each have happened to me once, so I figured that is a pretty accurate comparison. That being said, even Metal Gear Solid, the game itself relates to the player. Well, certain players at least. There are many examples of Metal Gear Solid trying to think outside of the box or do something clever with its dialogue, but my favorite example is the game reading your memory card. There's a character in the game, his name is Psycho Mantis. He'll read your memory card and he'll make note of that in the game.
You like Castlevania, don't you?
I can only imagine what that was like for people in the 90s who played the game and discovered that organically. Like, that must have been like a really cool little side thing the game just had, and it's probably something people still remember to this day how they felt when that happened. So trying to explain the Metal Gear Solid story in 5 minutes would be like trying to recite all 50 states in the quarter of a second. The reason the questions, is the main character perceived to be good, he succeed in the end, or is there an antagonist who viewers would like to see fail? Those questions are like impossible to answer because the answer to all of them is yes. And the answer to all of them is no. If you were to play the games in the order they were released, here's the story you were told. A very condensed version, of course. Alright, here we go from the beginning. You kill a man who looks like an older version of yourself. Oh, but wait, it turns out you did not kill him, but you did the second time, I think? Now you're a prisoner and you have a couple people in your ear helping you get through this mission. Oh yeah, and they come back in a short 20 real-life years, so remember who they are. The mission is to defeat a man who looks just like you, but is the version of you with the opposite DNA traits. So after you kill him, from there's another man who looks just like you, but he's older, but it's not the guy from earlier. Oh yeah, and there's this other guy most people don't care about. But you go on and you defeat him at the end, but it turns out he's not the final boss of this. Did I mention the villain from the previous game who looks like you, but the opposite DNA actually didn't die, technically? How? Oh well, one of the other characters you defeat to get to him loses his arm, so he figures he would take the guy with the opposite DNA as you and sew his arm onto his own body and use that as his arm. But I guess the side note was doing that led to them sharing a body, so now obviously they're both alive in the same body. Anyways, let's move forward to the next game by going 40 years into the past. Now you're that old guy we killed twice in the beginning. Anyways, he pulls off a crazy mission that lays out the events that lead to the future. But he's portrayed as a hero. I mean, he stops atomic war, so is he a bad guy? From there, we jump just 60 years into the future. We go from all this old technology and old medicine and stuff to this futuristic game that even real life hasn't caught up to. But we are finally at the end. The end of this game leads us to fight the guy. God, it's such a confusing story to tell. We fight the opposite DNA guy, now in the other person's body, on the roof of this high monster machine thing that we just defeated, and beat him. After we beat him, the character we played as in the beginning, oh my God, so confusing. After we beat him, the character we were at the very beginning is now like an old man and he's standing in front of a grave. But then guess who shows up? The guy we killed 30 years ago shows up again. So the first time we didn't kill him. The second time we might have killed him and he got brought back somehow. So you would think that's the end. But another game comes out and we have to go back just 50 years. The guy we've been playing as for most of this story, no. Oh my god, I missed that part. Oh my god, I missed that part. Turns out you and the opposite DNA guy use this guy's DNA. So both you and the other guy are clones of this guy, if that makes sense. The guy we're cloned from had a crazy story where he met people with superpowers, started a rivalry that started everything technically. However, we're not the guy we were cloned from. We're a guy who was surgically altered to look like him, and that's why we were killed twice in the beginning. One was this guy and one was the actual guy. So was that easy to follow? All of that is why I find it hard to answer those three questions. Who you think is bad is good. Who is good does bad things. And it's hard to say if they succeed or not, in my opinion, because they all die. Yeah, we're not in war, but the people who fought for that died anyway. So like, it's hard to say we won. With a little bit of remaining time I have left, I would like to show how the Metal Gear Solids cover all the motives and reasons for playing video games. First, diversion. Metal Gear Solid covers a lot of different races, genders, ages, machinery, and even mythical figures. So you're bound to relate to something. Next is fantasy. The technology these games use are some that took some real imagining. Playing these games lets you take a step out of real life and into one with things we are probably a century away from in real life. If that's not enough fantasy for you, well then you can fight a vampire in 4. Or fight an invisible sniper in 5. Or just fight a big Metal Gear robot in Peacewalker for 2 hours. Then we got social interaction and companionship. I group these two together because to me they're kind of similar. Whenever I see someone who shares the same joy I get out of these games, it helps build a bond. I remember I had a friend in high school who played these games, and even though this was a single player game, it made me like want to see what other games he played, and from there we actually started gaming together. I actually have a funny story about him. He was having a hard time with one of the missions in the game and basically like challenged me to do it. So he let me borrow his game, and after a while of dying myself, I figured it out. And not only did I finish the mission, I was driving around in the car in the empty base because I beat everybody. And from there, he never asked for the game back, so I might have retired him from the Metal Gear Solid game. And then we get to competition and stress relief. The reason I put these two together is because they kind of seem like yin and yang to me. The entire series, you're up against something, whether it's a sniper, a twin clone, a twin father, or a flying robot woman. All these things are just something else to distract us from the real world problems we have. Not to mention the relief you get from beating them. Or, remember when I said, or get lucky earlier? I was referring to this one fight you can have in Metal Gear Solid 3 when you fight the End. The End is one of the most unique bosses in video game history. Let me put you in a scenario. You keep losing to this old man sniper, so much that you quit. And then a couple days go by and you realize you're not a quitter. So you get back on 8 days later, and now it's time to end the End. You turn the game on, you load up your file, but wait, you're greeted with a cutscene. If you don't beat the End in 8 days, he actually dies of old age. Like, how cool is that? Then there's arousal and excitement, and it's last and probably least. Like, why is this in the game? Who is this for? Well, I mean, I guess I know who it's for, but like, how does this add to the story in any way at all?